Forbes India presents ZPay Crypto Simplified.
Hello and welcome to Crypto Simplified, where we attempt to demystify cryptocurrencies. In today's episode, we have a guest who's deeply entrenched in cryptocurrencies when it was a preserve of just the techies. Going by the Twitter handle Crypto Sara, also called as Altcoin Sara, she has created differentiated content in this category. She's also a fitness enthusiast who has dedicated herself to health and well-being. You've got to check out her Instagram account to know what I'm talking about. Thank you, Sara, for joining me.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I am so flattered and I'm really looking forward to the discussion that we're going to have today.
Lovely, thanks. And I think I'm going to start with a very cliched question, one that you must have gotten a million times. Why Altcoin Sara? Why Crypto Sara? What is that about? Because when you type your name on Google, it's hard not to associate your name with either altcoin or crypto or Bitcoin. So how did that come about?
So there are two stories. One of them is it ended up being at Altcoin Sara because at Crypto Sara was taken. But the reason why I went with Altcoin Sara and not blockchain Sara or Ethereum Sara or anything like that is because I thought the way I was used to invest when I got into crypto in 2017 was an appropriate way of representing it. So as we know, altcoins are everything that's not Bitcoin. And when I first got into the space, I would essentially buy anything just because I like their logo, I like their name. I've done absolutely no research. I just put my money into it. As expected, then the bear market came down, and of course, 99% of my investments were down, dead, or just so down they've never recovered, actually. So I definitely learned a lot from it, which is probably why am I where I am today. So don't do that, guys. But that's where the name comes from. Altcoin, it was my strategy for investing back then.
Excellent. And I think you recently tweeted that it's so easy to become a millionaire in crypto in 2022, as long as you start the year with $1 billion and watch it fall. Now, let's all hope you were kidding. But if the recent times are anything to go by, crypto enthusiasts are probably biting their nails or scratching their heads because as we record this, Bitcoin has dropped to a 6 month low. What do you was that half in zest, the tweet that you had sent out? How do you see it pan out?
So personally, I think that people should not really be worried about the Bitcoin price, especially, I know it was a pretty steady decline in the last 30 days, but I think the investors should be worried zero. And it's zero because nothing has really changed in terms of Bitcoin fundamentals. And the fact that it is #1 cryptocurrency with the underlying principles that no other asset class can compete with. I mean, El Salvador, for example, made Bitcoin a legal tender in September 2021, and the government has consistently been purchasing Bitcoin and its dips ever since. And the only reason I can actually see anyone as worried is if they invested more than they can afford to lose. Bitcoin and crypto are definitely a long-term game. I do not know what's going to happen to the price of Bitcoin today, next week, or even this year, to be fair. I do, however, know that in the grand scheme of things, in 10 years' time, we will see a Bitcoin at least 10 times the value it is today. And this little dip that we've been experiencing for the last few weeks will be completely unnoticeable on the Bitcoin price chart. And, everyone perceives the crypto market as a get-rich-quick scheme. And as true as it can be, for 99% of people, it's not going to work like that. And people rush with their investments, do not do their own research, buy more than they can afford to lose, and therefore end up selling when the price dips as they're worried about losing even more and therefore just being in the loss.
Right. And I think I've been reading online about how people talk about, I thought I bought the dip or I bought in the dip and then it dipped further. So when is that, is it an abyss, that it just keeps plummeting? But you say that, you said something interesting there. You said the fundamentals of Bitcoins haven't changed. So could you explain that a bit? What indeed are fundamentals of Bitcoin or crypto world? Obviously, every coin, I mean, I'm not talking about the Doge coins and the those coins which are there just as memes, but what is the trust that you have or you have put in over the years, notwithstanding that you started off on the wrong foot without researching, but what are those fundamentals?
So it's very interested topic. I think it's very interesting to actually consider the whole space as blockchain technology, which essentially what Bitcoin is based upon, includes characteristics such as decentralization, transparency, immutability, almost automation, and these elements can and are applied to multiple industries, which creates a multitude of use cases. I mean, in Bitcoin, because that was the question you've asked me, it has been proven that sending money across borders can be done in no time. True, there are many who dispute the Bitcoin network, the fees associated, people joking around that if you order a coffee in a Starbucks and pay with Bitcoin, your coffee's gonna go cold by the time your transaction gets approved. But there are solutions to it, like Layer 2 Lightning Network allows transactions to be immediate with 0 to no fees. And those are the solutions that are going to be paving the way towards the future of the blockchain, I think. And those fundamentals have never changed. The current financial system that we live in and are a part of is falling apart. I mean, the current inflation situation, US 7%, many countries falling apart earlier this year, last year, sorry, 2021. It's just the beginning of something that I don't think people are really expecting that is going to happen. But I don't want to sound pessimistic, but the world that we know is coming to an end.
Right, and you touched upon inflation there. It's
Yeah.
no different in India as well, where food prices are rising. Generally, the bank in India, we have this concept of fixed deposits, where you put some money in the bank for 90 days or 1 year or 10 years, and you get a fixed rate of return. Now, the difference between that rate and the inflation rate has been diminishing over time.
Yeah.
So, and which is, I think, pretty much the same in the West, or more so. So do you see Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies in general a hedge against inflation, or how are the two related? And you also wrote recently a bit about it, where it was a facepalm moment where people don't understand that not investing in Bitcoin would be counterproductive, especially in countries where the inflation is high. Why do you say that?
Oh, that is a great question. I've been really passionate about it, as mentioned in my tweet. Hyperinflation is an extremely rare event, especially for developed countries, but it has occurred many times throughout the history, in countries such as China, Germany, Russia. And the typical inflation rate, for example, for the United States, and to be fair, any healthy economy, is around 2%. In December 2021, the US inflation was around 7%. And that was after a year, months and months on end of inflation rate higher than a healthy economy should sustain. And since Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies are not based on centralized systems, their worth cannot be determined by governmental or financial institutions. And blockchain technology ensures that the issuance of new coins follows a predefined schedule, and that each unit is unique and immune to duplication. And those are just some of the reasons why cryptocurrencies are becoming increasingly popular, especially in countries that are dealing with hyperinflation, such as Venezuela, where the period of hyperinflation started back in 2016. I think it was around 800% inflation back then, up to over 2.5 million in early 2019. There was also Zimbabwe, which was actually the first country to experience hyperinflation in the 21st century and was the second worst inflation episode in history. And it was so bad that they even abandoned their national currencies, and foreign currencies were adopted as a legal tender. And those countries, just as examples, have seen a pretty dramatic rise and further interest in the peer-to-peer payments for the digital currencies that they have to offer. We also have some other countries and authorities which are seriously studying the possibilities and risks that are associated with the introduction of a government-backed cryptocurrency as a potential alternative to their traditional fiat system. And as an example, the Central Bank of Sweden is among the first. There are some other countries that, and the central banks of, for example, Singapore, Canada, China, of course, US as well. And many central banks are actually experimenting with blockchains. This system, I don't think, will necessarily create a new paradigm in terms of the monetary systems policy, as their cryptocurrencies are very unlikely to have a limited or fixed supply like Bitcoin. But this is why I think cryptocurrencies are the savior to the inflation that we're currently experiencing on every term.
And how would you, argue with a skeptic who says that, hey, I need to know what my Bitcoin or, what is the worth of 0.5 Bitcoin that I hold, or whatever, 1 Bitcoin that I hold. If it keeps yo-yoing the way it is today, how do I know whether I can buy a loaf of bread or a car with that same amount of currency? Or is it, as you mentioned at the start, it is such a long-term game that you've got to wait until these fluctuations taper out, and there comes a day and time where indeed it will mature. So which way would you hedge? Or is there a third possibility altogether that we aren't seeing?
So personally, I think that, of course, there are going to be skeptics, and the situation with skeptics very often is that they go from one extreme to another. I agree that the fluctuations that Bitcoin has are an issue when it comes to the purchasing power, but we have to remember that fiat currency has lost 99% of its value. US dollar, British pound, Japanese yen, all those currencies are losing their value on a daily basis. If you are not getting a pay rise of at least 10% every year, you are essentially taking a pay cut, because the inflation doesn't allow you to purchase as much. It's losing its purchasing power. So I think rather than focusing on some, not imaginary, but on issues that are yet to be developed and addressed, I think it's really important to focus on the situation that we're currently experiencing in today's world, and actually focus, like I say, long-term with crypto, long-term with your investments, and also your livelihood. There are so many different opportunities within the space, and I think it's so important to develop them all, as blockchain has so many also implications as well, and use cases. It's a beautiful world we live in.
Well, let's talk about that then. What a couple of applications that excite you in the world of blockchain, and you, I think your Twitter handle talks about quote, you are addicted to blockchain, unquote. So tell us about that. What are some of the use cases in a way that, let's say, a 12-year-old can understand without it being too complicated? So
Christ, okay. Well, 12-year-old, okay. That is the best way to see if you actually understand the topics, if you can explain something to a child. So it's
or your grandmother. That's what one of my editors once told me. Yeah, either it's
exactly.
a 12-year-old or a grandma or your grandmom.
There is no other way. Absolutely. So let's start maybe with something that a 12-year-old could understand. Is, for example, the blockchain use case when it comes to the digital identity, right? So those systems will provide unified tamper-proof infrastructure, which will allow against any sort of theft, as well as provides universal greater unity over the data. You don't want anything stolen from you. You don't want your teddy to be stolen from you out of nowhere. You want to have it identified on the blockchain, and this can be ensured by a supply chain management, which means that the existing global supply chains are very inefficient, poorly tracked, and the blockchain can ensure that the asset tracking, the licensing of services, products and softwares, and the transparency of the consumer goods is taken to the source of the consumption for the users. What else? What else does a 12-year-old will understand? I'm trying to aim
I think I read recently about vaccines where there are a couple of countries who are experimenting to store data of those who have got the vaccination, because you cannot have more than two if you're taking those double vaccinated jabs. So where that data such that it is not tampered by a central authority, or because of an inadvertent flaw by somebody entering, punching in that data, wherein or maybe land records in India. That's something that we do, where when two parties under if I'm buying a house from you, there is a big sum that I have to set aside to get it notarized or to get it stamped by a government authority saying that yes, now the legal entity of this land has moved from Abhishek to Sara, which entails a lot of cost. Now, if that is on a blockchain, I read recently that nobody can tamper it. There is evidence that the transaction indeed happened, and it will happen for a fraction of the cost, perhaps. Not that a 12-year-old understands all this, but these are some of the applications, I mean, that I've recently bumped into. So it does have a future, if not immediately. Then
exactly. And like you said, the healthcare is a great example, because they will enable faster and more efficient and so much more secure medical data management, as well as the medical supply tracking. And this could impact the patient care, the advancement to the medical discoveries, and ensure the most importantly, the authenticity of drugs circulating in the global markets, just like you said. And I think once we're having this conversation, we cannot forget about decentralized finance and DeFi. It essentially refers the shift from the traditional, as we know it, centralized financial systems to peer-to-peer finance, which is enabled by decentralized technologies, mainly built on Ethereum, and millions are building and participating in this new economic system that is setting new standards for not only financial access, but also opportunity and trust. We also got the transactions. There is endless amounts of applications to the blockchain. Government, like you said, we also got the public sector. There's endless. We could have a completely separate podcast just to talk about the benefits and the uses of the technology.
Do you also see that the younger engineers or MBAs or the younger lot are also seeing this industry as a possible professional choice? I was talking to a friend of mine who is willing to take a pay cut and join a company which is in this space, and saying that this is Web 3.0 and this is the future. So I may as well take a pay cut, go at a lower position, and see where it takes me 5 years down the line. It is so-called the sunrise industry. Is that happening? Is it a fad, or do you see that as being the future for the youngest lot? In 2005 to 2012, I think it was Facebook, Twitter. People were willing to work for these, at the time, startups. And now Facebook is going through its own misery with rebranding, etc., etc. But is this the new place to be in, from somebody who's been in this industry for a while?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, this is where the changes are happening. This is the new world order, as I mentioned earlier. And there's been so many trends in the crypto space in 2020 and the years before that will continue to lead the development as well as the adoption of the market to a much larger scale. My background, for example, just for anyone considering it, I am a civil engineer. I've quit my job a month ago, and now I do crypto full time. It's something I could have done for over the last 2 years. I've done it alongside my job. And the reason why I decided to quit is because I saw so much more potential in the space that I just couldn't say no to it anymore. I am creating content, I am mining, there's so many stuff you can do. You can earn yield, staking, so much to learn in the space that I just couldn't give it up anymore. I miss being an engineer enormously, but I still got my bodybuilding from my life, so that is all fine. But coming back to the topic of people considering it, so I think that the areas that if anyone is interested, content creation is very simple. You just, well, in principle, you share what you think, remain consistent with it. But if someone is thinking more into development, I think DeFi spaces, NFTs, metaverse, GameFi, to be fair, any sort of to earn movement, I think will be leading the 2022 and the 20s of 2020. will be on the forefront of the development. So if anyone's interested into pursuing those areas, I think those are the ones that are going to survive. As we know, Web3 is happening as we know it. You know, some people are still stuck in Web1, and we are already on Web3 developing and trying to work it out as much as we can and accommodate for the amazing developments that we've had over the last decade. And it's going to be incredible to see what's happening.
Right. The last couple of questions, Sarah. Going back to the financial side of things, as in the price at which these cryptocurrencies trade. Now, your moniker is Altcoin Sara. So what are some of those alternative or altcoins other than Bitcoin that you, after years of research, have found that, all right, these are some that you guys who are listening out there can focus on, notwithstanding their current state of things? Because for all we know, when we put this recording out, we have no idea where Ethereum, where Solana, where Cardano, etc. Might be. But which are the top three, let's say, if I were to put you on a spot and say, and why, very briefly?
Wow, top three. Wow. Okay, so before I get onto it, this is something that I always think, and I know it's pretty controversial. So I think of crypto space as we've got Bitcoin, we've got Ethereum, and we've got altcoins. So I don't think of Ethereum as an altcoin. I think it's a little bit offensive to put SafeMoon, Shiba Inu, and Ethereum into the same basket. Okay, Ethereum, just like Bitcoin, is the forefronter of its kind, and I think it deserves a little bit of respect. So that's sort of my approach. But to answer your questions, I think we need to think of the categories that are going to be exploring in the next year. So, like I said, DeFi, Metaverse, and some sort of GameFi projects. GameFi are actually projects I'm still exploring, so I can't give any examples, and I'd be really bad giving any examples. But I think that with the potential that a DeFi has, with especially, you know, yield farming, which is something that's incredible, being a liquidity provider, same, the risk is massive, but the rewards are even greater. In most instances, it's very important to, I don't want to make any recommendations because I think people should do their own research. I will recommend the industries which people I think should be looking at. As we know, the 2022 will be influential year for decentralized platforms as well, DXs, DApps, because they will be the underlying infrastructure of the Web3, with the NFTs as well as the growing craze that will popularize metaverse among the users. And even though metaverse is pretty much a concept still, and what I mean by this is it is not widely known nor understood by the general public, the metaverse will gain mainstream awareness as more brands join the NFT craze and develop new experiences for users in the coming years. And this trend will actually allow us to legitimize the metaverse in the eyes of the wider world and bring in significant revenue. As we know, we've got just recently, Adidas and Prada announced a collaboration for NFT collection. You know, people might not know what NFTs are, what crypto is, but everyone knows Adidas, everyone knows of Prada, and people will start researching into it. You are seeing big companies, big profiles on social media with Bored Apes NFT as their profile pictures. You can even, your profile picture on Twitter can be an NFT now. You can sort of link it, and it's incredible. I'm not too sure if I'm going to do it, but it's a different story. So there are so many options to actually bring it to people, and it's incredible to see that the big boys are jumping onto the wagon as they bring so much more faith and trust into industry, which is so unknown to the majority of people, you know.
Right. I think I recently, it was, wasn't it Andreessen Horowitz, the very famous venture capitalist outfit? They are the ones who bet big on Bitcoin, on investments, and they've got a significant billions of dollars set aside for you know, investments in Bitcoin. So, right, these are the conventional kind who had once upon a time invested in new age technologies and startups and social media outfits back in the mid 2000s, and now they're training their guns on crypto. There are a couple of big names there as well. And the last one, and again, let me try and put you on a spot again. And you wiggled out pretty well on the previous question, and by focusing on the industries. But what's the general financial advice that you may have? Should one look at a very funny sounding name and, I like the name, let me put some money in, or, oh, I like the logo, and do it? Or when you say research, whom should we trust? How should I go about investing in crypto if I'm somebody who's starting out? And how much? That's the second part of the question. How much should I be putting in? Some, 1%, 5%, or you said you touched upon the fact that don't invest more than what you are willing to lose. That's a good tenet. But overall, what's your advice to those who want to get in?
Oh Christ, what a question. Okay. Especially the second part. Okay, so let's start off from the start, right? I think it's very important for people to have a strategy for crypto trading. And it's not easy to separate genuine cryptos from the scams. And there's loads of sharks out there just waiting to take your money from you. So when you're confronted with a lot of information about a crypto, take a step back from the hype, try to look for for the critical points of the project. How many users does it have? What problems does it solve? Does it have any links with the industry? Not everything belongs on the blockchain. The crypto has an actual use case, and avoid essentially the coins that promise the end of the world, the earth, but haven't delivered anything tangible. Secondly, I would say manage your risk. Set limits on how much you invest in a particular digital currency, and don't be tempted to trade with more money than you can afford to lose. Once again, I'm saying that. Right. Which will lead me to actually the way to do it is by diversifying your portfolio. It doesn't pay to have too much invested in one single cryptocurrency. Like as with stocks with shares, spread your money out among different digital currencies. And this means you don't risk being overexposed in case one of them plummets in value, especially as the market prices of these investments are so volatile. Just be in it for the long term. And one of the recommendations that I have is actually sort of automating your purchases. And what I mean by it is, like with regular stocks and shares, automating your crypto purchases to take advantage of the so-called dollar cost average method. So most exchanges, Coinbase, Binance, allow you to set up the recurring bag, which is essentially what a dollar cost averaging is. And this is where crypto investors tell the platform to purchase a fixed amount of their preferred cryptocurrency every month. I don't know, for example, £100 worth of Bitcoin. And it means they get a bit less of the currency when prices are high and a little bit more when the prices are low. Right. But crypto is extremely volatile, high risk investment. And there's nothing stopping Bitcoin from dropping 30% overnight just to go up by 400% the day after. So I think that it's, because you asked me about the amount, right? And this is like a really financial advice over here. So I'm just going to start with the fact I am not a financial advisor. This is just my personal opinion and what I did when I was an engineer, when I first got into the space. So I think a reasonable amount is to put around 10 to 20% of your salary into the dollar cost averaging, right? Because it is, I think, a reasonable amount. If you can't do it, even 5% will be fine. If you're only just starting, want to see what it's like, learn what's it like, if that strategy works for you. I just think it is the safest way of ensuring you are getting the most out of it. I know people say, oh, but I am buying at the top, you shouldn't do that. Well, no one actually knows where the top is. No one really knows where the bottom is. It'd be wonderful if we could predict and time it perfectly. Trust me, I wish I could, but we can't. And by doing so, you're ensuring that you're getting the best value for your investment.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Sara, for your time on this video cast and podcast. It was lovely talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Abhishek. I'm really looking forward to seeing this. And if anyone has any questions or anything, I am Altcoin Sara on Twitter. Feel free to reach out to me, message. It'll take me probably a couple of days to get to everyone if you message me, but I always get to everyone. I understand that the space is confusing. There's so many aspects to it. I completely understand, and I truly believe that there is no such a thing as a stupid question. So if anything, Altcoin Sara, I'm here to help. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. I remember outside my college dorm window, it said even Einstein asked questions. So you're right. There is no stupid question. Everybody has one, and you might as well get it sorted because the field is so fledgling, and not everybody has an answer yet.
Exactly. And there is no such a thing as a stupid question. There are stupid answers, I think. But how else are you going to learn if you don't ask the questions? And how do you know which questions are right to ask if you have honestly no idea in the space? So yeah, I'm here to help. More than happy. Thank you for having me so much. It was awesome.
Thanks again. Thank you so much.
Forbes India presents ZPay Crypto Simplified.